Yeah, so you've talked a lot about the importance of doing things differently, particularly focusing on the importance of mining for value. Yeah, why change if people are so comfortable?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that might be working in our favor to change now. I get the sense that a lot of people are liking the current state of government, and they are rightly so expecting more and expecting better. And so going through the motions and doing things the way that we have typically done is not going to cut it anymore. I think the electorate, and so going through the motions and doing things the way that we have typically done is not going to cut it anymore. I think the electorate is wanting that change, and so it's incumbent upon government to look at the role they play in people's lives and take it to heart that they're being challenged. And I don't think this is going to pass. I don't think this is something that is just going to be a fly by night and just let's ride it out and it'll just go away. I don't get that sense this time. Maybe has a little bit to do with COVID, right? And it's been this pause where people have been reflective and people have been, it's okay to want better than we have right now. And so I think those expectations on the other side of this break or pause will be wanting better, and I think that goes to that value thing, is really figuring out where it is that we as government will have that impact on people's lives, and take it very seriously.
Yeah, what do you think will change? Given with COVID, just the state of politics right now, with everything that's going on, what do you think will change in terms of the things that we have to adapt to?
Yeah, well, I certainly know that we've been challenged in a way that has forced us to demonstrate some resiliency, and we've been able to deliver services and programs in a different way than we have before. So I think what will change is that the box that was service delivery before, much of the services that were provided, whether they be counter services by a municipality, would be delivered like banker's hours, like a 9 to 5 sort of thing. Well, certainly, I think the expectation going forward now will be, well, why isn't it done remotely?
Mhm.
Why isn't it done online? Um, why can't I pay my taxes if I do them monthly? What's wrong with a Saturday evening at 6 o'clock if that's convenient for me? So I think that that flexibility and resiliency that we have now will be expected. So things like that'll change. Um, I think you've seen lots of the recreation things that have happened from municipalities be either curtailed or turned off, and people have had to find other ways to make that work. So I don't know whether that revenue stream or that engaged component of the community will necessarily come back. So what does that look like, right? Do we need to think about that space and how it could look different or function different? Is there partnering opportunities with private, because people are already doing that? Is it active recreation, or is it more, like the yoga sessions or mental health, those well-being kind of modeling, where people have really kind of embraced that now and looked at self-care. There's just so many different things to contemplate now, whereas before we got a little bit complacent in not only what we delivered, but how we delivered it.
Right. Yeah. And I think something that very relevant to this idea of delivery, and something that we haven't fully been able to address yet, just because we're still in, in COVID times, we're still dealing with the second or third wave, whatever it is now. And we haven't fully confronted that brunt of the recession, of people not being at work, right? Of governments needing to spend so much money. And we still, I feel, have some pretty big financial challenges coming up. And that's a really big part of what you talk about is, our focus can't just be on the money aspect, but it seems to me like that's what's coming up though. So can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah. So, yeah. And man, that strikes a chord with me. I would have hoped that we would always be thinking in that, again, and you and I are broken record with this term value, but legitimately going forward, because of what you have just said, we're not gonna turn on a dime and the economy's just gonna be going gangbusters and people will automatically, things will be back to the way they were. I think we're gonna be in a depressed state where there won't be a bunch of desire to spend a bunch of money coming out of this. And I don't think we can ask citizens, like, we're not going to go to be asking them for tax increases immediately. There might be several years of revenue constraints for municipalities. So again, relevancy of what we are providing for those citizens needs to be the first question. So we can't continue to provide things just because we've always provided them before. And don't rush to, oh, how can we be more efficient and effective at it?
Mm-hmm.
Is it relevant anymore? Those are the big questions that have to be asked, because we need to make sure that every single dollar that's spent of citizens' investment into the community is relevant to them and is going to provide the value that they should rightly expect. Because just doing what we did last year and asking for more to do it next year is not, I think there's years and years ahead of being asked to be very resilient as a municipality and do as much as you can in a constrained environment.
Yeah. So what would you say would be the best way to have these difficult questions then? Or sorry, these difficult conversations with politicians?
Well, I think that the big the stream that is the same for citizen, business, elected officials is, you know, we have a customer, whether that be a citizen or a paying customer or a client, and they are all trying to get the most out of that investment or that dollar that they're spending, and whether it be services or bundles of goods or a widget that you're buying, you're always going to be critical of what you're getting back in return. And so, elected officials, if they have the desire to get in next time, they're going to have to really be cognizant of the satisfaction of their citizens. They're going to be paying more attention to that investment, more so than they ever have before, and especially at the local level, because they're right there. Even in a big city, outgoing Mayor Don I haven't seen more critiques of him, than I have more recently. And I don't think it's going away in this time of social media and the immediacy of being able to provide feedback. You got to be on your toes, and things won't be able to let slide anymore. And so you're going to be on your toes and thinking about it constantly and demonstrating that value and demonstrating that you care and you have some empathy, and so it's going to be the hot seat, so to speak. But I think if you roll up your sleeves and you embrace the fact that you're a public servant and you're doing good, it can be still a really exciting place to be. But you better be on your toes, and there's no getting complacent anymore.
Well, I think that's one of the most important challenges when it comes to really genuinely engaging the community, though, is particularly in times of, quote unquote crisis, when there's so many issues and problems that a wide variety of citizens are facing. It's difficult to really know what you should prioritize. Despite the variety of or the diversity of issues that you have to deal with, you still have to come up with some kind of plan, right? You still have to find ways to mine for that value. But is there a point where strategic planning almost is it's almost impractical because of all the different things that you have to deal with?
Well, they can, in this day and age of that immediacy that I was talking about, sometimes that seems to fly in the face of having a strategic plan and thinking long term, right? So yeah, it's hard to sometimes keep your eye on the prize and make decisions of the day. But that's why terms like well-being and those goalposts from which to operate every day are helpful. And I don't know whether this is legitimate to bring up or whatever, but when you're being judged for the decisions that you make, I think you need to be mindful of what you're throwing out there, as far as those dashboards that get put up by municipalities and their performance, and you see measures like potholes filled, and Edmonton's a classic example. They still have potholes filled on there. Well, is it, does that add any value to the conversations even of today? Because you're only ever going to critique the city if you hit a pothole. You're never going to get a bouquet from them experiencing a smooth road, right? So, but longer term thinking and putting in longer term investments into really good roads that don't have potholes are probably the way to go, right? So that long term thinking can really have the benefits day to day as well. We need to tailor the conversations and help people get to the level of conversation that we think is legitimate, right? So and it takes some stamina to kind of dampen out those the loud minority, like that 1% that seems to scream the most often and probably get 80% of the airtime.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I think a good question actually then to ask is, what do you think is the best way to deal with resistances, both within the government itself, but also among the people that you're trying to engage with? Because there's going to be resistance to change across the board, I imagine.
Yeah, I think you don't rush into it with a solution. I think you need to be open to absolutely listening to critique and listening to every opinion. Not all of it is going to stick, and I don't think you should overpromise and telling everyone that you'll have a solution for them, because that's setting everything up for failure. But just really being open to crafting something with all sorts of input, with all sorts of thought, with coming from all sides. I think that's always the best end solution. Going in with all the answers is never a good starting place. So people are going to be more able to get over that resistance if they could recognize that they were part of the solution, and even if can't recognize exactly something in there that is theirs, if they were part of the conversation and maybe influenced somebody else in the room, I think there's real value in that, right? I think genuinely people just like to contribute and just like to be heard. The worst thing you can do is, like I said, come with all the solutions in mind. I know maybe early on in my career, to try to prove myself, I'd sometimes show up in a room like that, and I'd get really frustrated because I thought I knew all the solutions, and then we'd leave and mine didn't get chosen. So I can really empathize with where people might have that same struggle. But I think you just invite those people in to be heard, and not overpromise, but definitely consider and try to make sure that they're heard.
Yeah, from what you've done and what you've seen, what do you think is the best way to be inclusive of different perspectives? People have different needs, people have different levels of comfort when they're in a public discussion. How do you make sure that certain people aren't dominating with their perspectives? Is the goal always to find consensus in conversations? Or is there also some value for having some conflict here and there?
Man, I love conflict, actually, because coming in with a set opinion and just hanging on to it is not great. I love having the open, constructive, not battling it out, but man, the best solution always for me is where somebody has changed my mind a little bit, because I don't have all the solutions, and I'm not going in thinking everybody has or someone has the solutions. I like that 80% rule. Is if we can get to the point where 80% of this room can see benefit in moving this forward the way that we've crafted it now, that's legitimate. That waiting for 100%, I think, is just, you set yourself up for just spinning your wheels. And I think there's way too many people in the room that just lose stamina, and they lose that excitement for creating the solution. And it's not, I don't think it's very realistic, actually, to have that 100% figured out.
Yeah, and imagine that's actually a really big part of being able to really prioritize for value, is being inclusive of that conflict, where you're able to avoid groupthink and just having one kind of that tunnel vision towards a certain kind of solution, where conflict really can show where your tension points are, and all the different things, as you say, that the people who come in with solutions may not have really understood because they didn't think enough about the problems or the different aspects of the problems that exist.
Yeah, I think that tension is where creativity thrives. Because usually when someone's come in with a set solution, they haven't been forced to think outside the box. They haven't been forced to contemplate other people's drivers and motivations. And until they're challenged with that in a respectful way, you don't get those really creative ways to get it to 80%, right? You come in 50-50 trying to drive to 100. 80 looks pretty awesome at the end of the day, and it's usually pretty creative and innovative way to get there.
Yeah, and especially now with the different issues that that governments are faced with, and also with everything that you've said about the importance of needing to change how we do things, that's being able to understand those tension points is so crucial, I imagine.
Yeah, we're never going to be at a point where there isn't tension or conflict or sorry to say, but we're, utopia isn't something on our horizon, um, and that's okay. Um, find, I mean, I think in other conversation we've had at a certain point in time, the term win comes up, right? And boy, um, I see a real win in just getting together as a collective and thinking about what we can do together, as opposed to this individual thinking. This it's really narrow, right? So there's bigger things at play, and you know that's the beauty as humans. That's what distinguishes us from every other species, right? Is that collective nature and that those things that we can do together, um, um, as a species, right?
So going back to the, this idea of change, would you say that it's a mindset that has to be collectively taken then, particularly in politics? And if that's the case, how do we do that? How do we get that mindset of wanting to think about the outside the box kind of solutions and to change our structures if they're actually holding us back from finding the real solutions?
Well, it is going to take some courage. I think that there's this bias to wanting to remain stable and secure in your thinking, um, and my hope is that those people that attain leadership roles, um, embrace that opportunity to, um, you know, allow some space for the new generation, that new voting block that is going to be hitting us soon enough, that is really engaged, and really wants to embrace that role of a collective society, and wants to tackle some big issues, intentionally make some space for that part of our society, because too often we fall back to, the 50, 60, 70-year old generation who, I'm sorry, um, you've had your opportunity, you've had your day in the sun to drive, the way things are. And I'm not going to say that your opinion is not legitimate anymore, but we need to share the space and be open to thinking a bit differently.
I guess just as a final kind of summarizing question then, um, what do you feel like is what's unique about our time right now? And you can talk about the context of COVID or the fact that we have so many problems that are coming up. What's what in your mind makes our situation unique right now when it comes to promoting this idea of change? And maybe talk a little bit about what is the most important change that you hope to see moving forward.
Yeah, well, you bring up COVID. I mean, certainly that is, um, showing us the resiliency that we can have, and maybe resiliency means that, um, you know we're not as fearful of change anymore. I had a conversation with my kids the
Mm,
other day. I said, you know, getting past this situation might be the most challenging thing that you face, and you've learned some really good coping skills and some, you're going to get on the other side of this, and boy, you can fly the rest of your career or the rest of your life, right? Um, so the uniqueness is that, the time we're afforded this time to reflect, and this time to think about what better can look like on the other side of this, right? And so, you know this polarization that we're facing right now, I think you'd be, even if you're on either side of that right now, I think if you were to ask people that are entrenched whether they want something better in the future, they would probably say that. It's just hard right now, but we're eventually going to get there, right? I have no doubt in my mind that we're going to be, fast forward 10 years, and when we look back at now and this polarization that's happening, I don't think we have the stamina to continue it, to be quite honest. So we either have the opportunity to get there sooner or later, and I'm hopeful and encouraged that with a little push from that generation that I mentioned earlier, we'll get there sooner rather than later. And so, you know, it's a unique time right now, in that we've got this collision of all these different generations, and I think it's time to embrace the opportunity to get those new folks and those exciting ideas, give them their space, like I said.
Yeah, ever so hopeful, and I think that's exactly what we need during these times when things feel so gloom. But yeah, as always, thank you for the conversation.
Thanks, Daryl. Always a pleasure.
Of course.